That's our humor, I think.
Oh, okay.
You whip me and I accept it. It's humorous.
I'm aghast at this accusation. Hey, everybody. You're listening to Creep It Real. We're serious business. Mm-hmm. Right out the gate. I'm Ashley.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm Bianca. Thank you guys so much for the amazing response on our Operation Paperclip series. We did get a lot of people reaching out to us and thanking us for educating them on our nation's sordid history.
Very important people here.
But thank you so much for letting us know that you thoroughly enjoyed our 2-part series, which I know we could have done a 3-part series.
Yeah, but we didn't want to.
Yeah, we wanted to get moving on the subject and on to October's spooktacular extravaganza.
Let's get started on the episode, please. I demand it. So today we're talking about shadow people, shadow beings, whatever you want to call them. They're shadows.
They're typically described as blacker than night, 2-dimensional human-shaped beings, usually male, but generally lacking any other characteristics of gender. Shadow beings are said to move extremely fast and travel through solid matter. They typically have no discernible features such as mouths, noses, or eyes, and their forms are usually described as somewhat thin or smoke-like. In some accounts, viewers distinctly see a shadowy human form, and others have described shapeless, wispy black blobs and swirling columns of dark smoke. Some are seen only from the waist up, and others clearly have legs that are often seen fleeing from their observers. Both children and adults observe these beings as fast, dark movements in their peripheral vision, and some have seen them from a distance, while others have had face-to-face encounters. In many cases, witnesses describe the sense of being watched and discovering the shadow person observing them. Once noticed, the shadow person seems to flee quite rapidly, sometimes traveling through walls or closed doors and bushes. Sometimes they simply fade into the dark recesses of the night.
I gotta tell ya, that sounds like a fucking nightmare to me.
I hate it.
I truly... First
just
of all,
like with black-eyed kids, I fucking hate it.
It gives
I don't
me
need
the
it.
heebie-jeebies to think about. Firstly, just feeling like I'm being watched. Secondly, that there's some sort of blob. So this is really starting in on a bad note here, probably. But I remember years ago watching Ghost Hunters, and they were at this prison, penitentiary, some old-ass place. They had cameras set up on the upper level of this one cell block where it was like just kind of a very long, very thin hallway and then a railing. Mm-hmm. And so they, at the very end, they set up a camera, and all of a sudden, like out of the ground, this blob shadow thing arose. It didn't walk into the frame. It literally came out of the ground and grew into this 7-foot-tall, giant, shadowy thing that then just whooshed away in a way that I don't ever want to see. Never in my life. Okay. As with the other paranormal entities we've discussed, these shadow beings have been experienced by a multitude of individuals all over the world, from all walks of life, various professions, and belief systems, and they go back hundreds and hundreds of years. Typically, their presence elicits terror in those who experience them, and they may be conjured by feelings of fear and uncertainty, and even emboldened by these negative emotions. These people are left oftentimes feeling violated, afraid, and helpless. About shadow people, Dave Richardson from the NWMSU Physics Department says if you just look at what a shadow means, it means the blockage of light somehow or the removal of light some way. It seems to be a difficult thing to actually reconcile with what we know about light and shadows in regards to the shadow person. But what about shadow people that get physical? In order to feel any actual sensation from these shadows, there has to be mass that exerts a physical force. For those convinced that shadow beings aren't actually physical but are instead ethereal, Rick Toomey from NWMSU says, in regard to those who have experienced a physical push, gravity only works in one direction. How many times did light knock you down?
It is believed that these shadow people are some sort of other dimensional beings whose dimension of origin occasionally overlaps with ours, which is said to explain their ethereal appearance and fleeting nature.
And you know I'm all about that.
I know you're all about the dimensional stuff. I'm so excited because there's a whole section on...
Right.
It's dimensional.
It's dimensional. Okay.
Reports of shadow people are in many respects different from accounts of ghosts. Ghosts are said to be the disembodied spirits of deceased people and are usually said to take on the appearance of characteristics of human beings. Orbs of light, ectoplasm, and glowing mists have also been associated with ghost sightings. None of which is common is the occurrence of shadow people. Although many accounts describe shadow beings as having human-like form, they are generally not described as resembling actual individuals, living or deceased. It has not been believed that shadow people ever communicate verbally with witnesses. And oftentimes, the categories of shadow people overlap. While some are ominous, there are other versions of shadow entities that are more benign.
In the book Darkness Walks by Jason Offutt, which we read, both of us read for the episode, he breaks he breaks down the different types of shadow people that he has uncovered in his research and interviews with witnesses. They are benign shadows, shadows of terror, red-eyed shadows, noisy shadows,
angry hooded shadows, shadows that attack, shadow cats, and the Hat Men.
He didn't, but the Brad Steiger guy wrote an entire book about shadow cats.
An entire book?
There's been, apparently all these sightings of a Black Panther in the United States.
Not the Marvel comic?
No. So, according to Offutt, these categories often overlap. So there are terrifying shadows with red eyes, hooded shadows that are noisy, etc. As a child, Offutt himself says that he experienced these shadow beings walking in fits and jerks around his room at night. What the fuck? I was like,
fits and jerks.
That sounds like a true horror movie.
That's the worst. We
Yeah.
were just watching. I think it's called The Taking of Deborah something, and she's an older lady, and we're just talking about why is it that old people walking around in nightgowns or just standing around in nightgowns and and walking around all creepy and fitfully. Why is that the creepiest thing ever?
First of all, I don't think a normal old person walking around in a nightgown is walking around in fits and jerks. So I'm where are you seeing this old person?
You gotta watch it. It's on, I think it's on Amazon Prime. Okay. Anyways.
All right. Well, Offutt, the poor kid, says that he would cry out for his parents, but that they never saw what he saw and kind of just brushed it off.
So, shadow people have been a part of our cultural mythos, presumably for forever. And specific descriptions of shadow people can be traced back to recent history in an 1887 short story called La Horda by Guy de Maupassant, who was a French author. His fictional take deals with an aristocrat's... His fictional...
Aristocrat. That's a new one. That's a new type of person.
His fictional take deals with an aristocrat's descent into his insanity, describes a fear of sleep, seeing a dark presence in his periphery, and finally feeling the presence become more and more invasive to the point of attacking the victim in question. The term shadow people first appeared in pop culture in 1953 in Creatures in the Shadows, a radio drama that appeared on Chicago's WGN-AM Hall of Fantasy.
That sounds pretty cool.
I like it. I like that we were talking about this in 1953.
Right.
However, the first reported incident of one of these entities was in 1949 and occurred to Charles Purcell's. Charles was 13 years old, and he lived with his mother, brother, and grandmother in San Jose, California, when a shadow man first began terrorizing him. He stated that he, his mother, and his brother were lying in their respective beds and that, quote, all at once, a dark figure dressed in a black cloak and wearing a black hat with a wide brim and tall crown appeared in the window.
Fuck.
The figure had no discernible facial features, but he took the figure to be a man. The shadow man stood at the window, reached out both hands, and raised the bottom sash of the curtains on the window. He began screaming for his mom, and when she came in, he told her what had happened, and of course, she doubted his story.
Dude, believe your kids, I have to say it.
They always doubt.
Ugh.
Parents always doubt.
It hurts my heart.
The next day, he recanted, the window had been locked from the inside the whole time. Outside, there were no footprints, and when he had attempted to open the window again, it made an audible, raspy, squeaky sound, which it hadn't done the night prior.
Ooh, well, way to go, Mom.
So, like Ashley mentioned before, there are different types of shadow people. The first being a benign shadow. And the most common shadow man report has him walking through someone else's home, oblivious to the people occupying the house. There are also accounts of these types of shadow entities that also leave behind scents. One account of a couple in Independence, Missouri stated that they could still smell his Chesterfield cigarettes. Now, I have a question.
Yeah.
Are Chesterfield cigarettes, is that the brand, or
Yeah,
is that just
I
like a
think so.
type of... Okay, so then would they be able to tell if it was like a Parliament?
I don't know. Maybe it's a very distinguishable old cigarette. I was reading about that story, and they were saying that the husband has even refused to sleep on like the certain side of the bed because the grandfather comes and hovers over, or the father, whatever it is, comes and
I saw
hovers
that.
over, and I'm like, what relegates him to one side of the bed? I don't know.
You can only stay in this. Maybe they have like a perimeter that they can go.
Who knows? It's all very interesting, the rules.
So in the benign shadow category, they seem closer to what our thoughts regarding ghosts are, at least again the non-malicious ones, especially with regards to their sense being left behind is concerned.
Yeah.
I've heard stories of people being able to smell like perfume.
Oh, right,
or,
right. Yeah,
you know
and
what I mean? With
cigarettes,
ghosts.
cigars.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
There were 2 5-year-old girls who experienced these benign shadow beings one night in their room, and they said that they told them that they were there as observers from a parallel dimension. Nothing more, nothing less. And the girls were completely unafraid and could also move about as they wished and weren't feeling paralyzed. They said that when a person encountering a shadow person feels paralyzed, it is because they have to be in order to be kept quote unquote safe and not harm the shadow people or themselves. I was like, if a 5-year-old girl told me that, I would be like, excuse me?
Yeah,
young lady?
I've known like a 2-year-old child to tell me, oh yeah, my old mommy didn't like this, and while I was sitting next to his mom.
Oh.
Girl.
That's a whole other thing right there.
Absolutely. We got to do something on that because when
It's
I
a
was sitting next to
phenomenon.
him, absolutely, my old mommy, and I was really good friends with his mom.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, he says that all the time. And, I just kind of chalk it up to he's just
Did he
just
have like an
saying
old
cute little
babysitter
things.
or something?
No.
What?
Mom was a stay-at-home mom, dude. I fully believe in something, and I think we can talk about it in a full-ass episode.
Okay, let's okay, sidetrack. Okay, here we go. Oh, the next type is a shadow of terror. So there's a man named James Bucknam who works as a non-religious exorcist for people who need his help. He says he gets all his clients by word of mouth and does not charge any of them 1 cent. I'm sorry, I just saw that. May lend to his credibility, maybe. He says he was taught how to exorcise these evil entities by a group of people that helped him with a dark, shadowy entity he was encountering at his job as a baker in Fort Smith, Arkansas. Just
Pay it forward. That's nice.
Pay it forward. So he has since moved to Massachusetts where he performs his exorcisms, and he believes that shadow beings are not deceased humans, not thought forms, or the product of overactive imaginations. He says, shadow people are negative spirits that come to our plane of existence through portals or doorways that lead to places of great negativity. These doorways can be found everywhere and unfortunately can only be opened if someone of their free will chooses to. He says this is when the negative effects begin to take hold. When a shadow being invades a home or begins to harass someone, it takes a toll on their health, which begins to deteriorate over time. They have difficulty sleeping, and when they do, they are tortured by their dreams.
James says, this sets off an energy that these shadow people enjoy. They change the atmosphere of a place to an energy that they are more comfortable with. This energy is very unhealthy, and over time makes for a toxic home. These shadows of negative energy are common and will make your life hell. One account from fall 2007 comes from a college student named Katie, and this account comes from her dorm room. For the first week after she moved in, she didn't encounter anything. However, the second week, she realized that there was something else in her room with her. She states that the presence in her room is almost oppressive, and she feels tense all the time. When she feels the presence, she looks over her shoulder and has a hard time going to sleep. She sleeps with covers up to her neck and describes the presence as a male shadow peering over the side of her bed.
Oh, no.
She sees things out of the corner of her eye, mostly things that appear and vanish. And because she doesn't know what he wants, she obviously doesn't want to piss it or him off, and she just wants to coexist.
Yeah.
So I read a lot of these stories regarding these terrors, and it just seems like they just bring about a feeling of foreboding and super heavy negativity.
Yeah. I'm like slightly wondering if there's an RA in the building that has creeped on her. What?
That's even worse.
I'm just saying. You have to think
it.
of all the possibilities.
That's true.
In 2006, a man named Blaine and his friend Dan stayed at a friend's house overnight where they each slept on couches in the living room. They were both awoken several times by unexplainable feelings of dread and odd noises. When on the final waking, they both witnessed the silhouette of a tall man standing in front of one of the windows, walking toward them. And then he suddenly dissipated through an ottoman. Those two dudes spent the rest of the night outside, foregoing their spots on the couches and just hanging out until daytime. What Blaine wanted to emphasize about his encounter is the feeling that the shadow being elicited. He says it was not like fear or nervousness that you get when the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. It's a much more intense feeling of doom or dread. It's a negative energy in the air, which I was like, well, that sounds just like Black Eyed Kids.
I swear to God, while I was reading this book, I was trying to figure out the parallels between the Black Eyed Kids and Shadow People, because it all just seems so similar.
Yeah, it does. And Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, I'm going to say that, too.
And, of course, your grand opus, Skinwalkers.
That's not my grand opus. It hasn't happened.
So far it is.
Okay.
Hopefully another one will come soon.
Okay, but yeah, there's just a ton, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to cover all these different things is because there are so many parallels to other phenomena that it's like they've got to be somewhat intertwined with each other. There's just no way that they're not, because they're just too similar. But anyway,
just like with Black Eyed Kids and the Men in Black.
Yeah. A woman named Tessa relayed a story of her encounter with a shadow being when she was 9 years old. A lot of these are with younger kids, and that's just the same with ghosts and stuff. I mean, I'm not going to discount kids because they might be, more open to this type of stuff, not as cynical, but there's so many kids accounts. Okay, so she stood at the window in her brother's bedroom as he lay on his bed reading when she suddenly felt like something was wrong. She says she remembers the feeling like it were yesterday. It was as if she was standing in an electric field, as she described it as a soft vibrating, which I had to OMG in cap.
I don't like it.
Oh, I had to OMG in parentheses because that's like Skinwalker Ranch. And Black Eyed Kids, some people said that they felt like an electrical kind of pulse coming through.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm like, again, whenever there's going to be correlating aspects of the stories, I'm going to point it out. So
for sure,
you're just going to hear us say that like 17,000 times whenever we do stories like this. So anyway, she felt it, or she described it as a soft vibrating. She said she felt a shortness of breath and turned from the window to face the rest of the room when she saw a shadow figure going from the left side of the room toward the wall. She said she somehow immediately knew it was a male and that he had the strangest way of walking, as if he were trying to sneak up on someone or sneak away from something. No, just don't. But it kind of reminded me of what the author said earlier about how the thing was doing jerky, weird movements.
I don't...
If that doesn't give you heebie-jeebies, then you're a stone person.
Absolutely. And good for you, really.
I guess.
That gives me like a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach.
Good for you, but you might be the kind of person that jumps off a cliff. Thinking.
Correct.
And so, have fun with that. Not to kill yourself, but as a recreational activity.
Paragliding.
To clarify. Not paragliding, like, what is it called? Free jumping?
Base jumping.
Base jumping. Or free climbing. That's another one that you probably would do.
That's another one that I would never ever do.
But if you don't think that little jerky sneaking shadow is scary, then you probably love that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. You love adrenaline.
All right. So, okay, Tessa felt that the being was not friendly, but in the end, he just disappeared through a wall. And the whole time, her brother did not see or feel anything strange in the room, which is very interesting. But not, I mean, that it's more interesting whenever actually there's a second person that has actually witnessed the same exact thing. But that does happen a number of times in stories that we'll tell today. So there's another man named Grover Bonham, which is quite a name. And and he says that the beings elicited a tremendous amount of terror in him that he could not really explain at all. He tried to logically work it out in his mind, and we heard that. We heard that when we covered Black
Where? Yes, we did.
Sorry. Okay, so there were a handful of other accounts where these shadow beings seemingly appear everywhere to individuals in broad daylight, at night, whenever, wherever. Sometimes they appear behind other people and they seem to mock them and their movements and actions to show other people who can see them in some way. And there are others that just simply stop and stare at the person encountering them.
So as an observer, they just want to watch. Yeah,
and they're not really interested in interacting. And there's also others that seem like if you see them, they want to leave, and there's I don't know. It doesn't seem like all of them are into scaring the shit out of you.
Right.
So, maybe some of them are good guys. Who knows?
They're just neutral observers.
Maybe. Oh, okay. So the next type is the red-eyed shadow person. Like the others, the red-eyed shadow person has reportedly been seen all over the world, and this particular type seems to be invasive and an overwhelmingly negative entity.
So they seem to feed off of fear in particular, and they will essentially do anything in order to elicit this fear, including changing shapes. They are often described as demonic presences, and one account even tells a story about a creature being a black dog with glowing red eyes.
I mean, listen up.
I love when you say listen up. This is when things get serious.
Listen up. When we did Skinwalker Ranch, there were tales of dogs with red eyes or wolves with red eyes. I'm just saying, guys, if this stuff doesn't all come full circle, color me red.
Color me something. I don't know
color
what
me
it is,
back.
But color it me.
Okay. I just can't get over it. Every time I start looking into a different subject, it always comes back around. And it's really begun to blow my mind. I'm sorry. And it should blow your mind too. All right? A woman named Liz Derringer had an experience shortly after giving birth to her daughter where she sat at the kitchen table holding the baby, and she saw a short hooded shadow figure with red eyes walk through the wall of her dining room. It stopped and stared at her, then continued walking through another wall to the basement. When she told her husband, he said that he hadn't wanted to scare her, but he had seen the same damn thing.
Oh, I hate it.
I hate it too. And I remember I talk about this show so much. I'm sorry, but on this one Paranormal Witness that I saw, there was this I think he was a airline pilot or something, and or maybe he was in the, I don't remember. He flew
again, lack of sleep though.
He flew planes or flight. He was some sort of pilot in some capacity. Yeah, true. He had these little hordes of these little shadow creatures running around, and I'm pretty sure they had red eyes. And I was like, that's so stupid. I was like, why? I was like, that sounds so stupid. Like, why would that guy go on TV and say that? But maybe that's really real. Maybe that's real. And this is just one other. I know, but still. But I'm just saying, I was just kind of like, what? That sounds so dumb. Like little shadow people. But, in reading this book and a couple other things that we read, there are various sizes of them. And people have various opinions about what that means exactly.
I just watched Paranormal Witness for the first time this weekend. Yeah, I know. And when I was watching it, there was a story, nothing related to this, all ghosts or demons.
Okay.
And she was talking about how her fan kept going on and off, and I was like, well, it's an old house. It's probably faulty wiring.
Yeah.
So that's the way my brain works, too, where I'm like, nah, I don't believe in all that. Like, yeah, that's stupid.
Well, I wish that you would have watched a real good episode then.
But that's what I'm saying. And yeah, we were trying to find a good episode, but anyways, so I get like the whole... Why would you go on the air and say some stupid bullshit like that? That's is what I'm getting to.
It's like, at the same time, though, as I've gotten older, I've become more accepting of the fact that I don't know what the fuck is going on in the world, okay?
That's true.
And so, I used to be very sure of things, like I'm an atheist, and, you're stupid. And now I'm like, I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't think it's this thing, but I absolutely couldn't tell you what it is, so I'm not going to say anything for sure,
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, anything is possible. So, there was also a man named Daniel Pestana of Portugal, and he has experienced shadow people throughout his life, and they have always been rather benign until one evening with his girlfriend. He said that they were walking home late one night when they heard a violent rustling at the top of a tree that they were walking by. Suddenly, they heard a noise as if something fell to the ground, and then they saw two black as night hands come over the top of the retaining wall that was in front of the tree. He said that the hands were blacker than black, almost like they were burnt paper, which I thought that might be like a decent description, because you might, whatever it is, like the absence of light, but it's like moving, and, that might be a very weird thing to actually see with your very own eyes,
Yeah.
Like maybe burnt paper is like a really great description because it has, I don't know. Then a similarly black head popped up over the wall as its hands pulled itself over it. He said that two brilliant rhino, I'm like, look at that little head popping up is enough for me to be right on out of there. He said two brilliant red eyes stared back at both of them, and then the creature let out some kind of roar and jumped up on the top of the wall. What the hell does that mean? I have no idea.
I hate it.
He said it had a human body, a human-like body, and it was pitch black from head to toe. He and his girlfriend clearly ran as fast as they could and never looked back, which is exactly what they should have done.
It's exactly what I would have done.
I would hope that the adrenaline would push me through and I wouldn't be stuck in quicksand of terror.
I say that's exactly what I would have done, but would I? Because
I
feel like you get into that when you're scared like that, you get into that panic and you get into that freeze mode as opposed to the fight or flight mode. So would I have? I don't know.
I feel like hopefully yes. Surely that would elicit a fight or flight mode in you,
right?
But like it's because in my dreams, if I get really terrified, I'll be like frozen. But maybe
for sure.
Maybe in real life, I would be like, get the hell out of here.
Or if I try to fight the thing, like
chop its head.
Hold on, no, it's like when I fight the thing, it's like ugh, and then I can't go any faster than
She's slow-mo punching right now for
slow motion.
All of you that can't see her.
I know, I'm like slow motion I'm slow motion punching, as if anybody can see me. Aside from you.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Okay, so then, moving on from those red-eyed ones are the noisy shadow people. When he was a teenager, Frank Beyer had experiences with shadow beings that were unlike any others that we have discussed. The ones that visited him emitted a loud buzzing that seemed to rattle his entire body, which he said felt like electricity, as if someone was poking him with something electric.
These particular shadows are reported to be more rare occurrences and are exactly as they sound. They're also a more common occurrence with ghosts. Ghost hunter Alexandra Grijulo said this buzzing sound isn't particularly reserved for shadow people and ghosts, but angels as well, as if they really do have wings. However, they're not all white, and they come in all shapes, sizes, and colors.
Huh.
So.
Okay. Dr. Dave Oster of the International Ghost Hunter Society says buzzing or chirping
Buzzing or chirping
are commonly experienced in ghost encounters, which he says is caused by rapid movement in the air, causing it to vibrate. Multiple witnesses say that the shadow beings that they were visited by made sounds like bees when they were talking to each other, which is interesting. I mean, maybe that's just how they interpreted it with their little dumb human ears. And these loud shadow people also told one witness if they were afraid, they could start with making a low hum that eventually got louder, and the beings would be gone if they did that. And it actually supposedly worked. And when I say they told him, it was not verbally, it was through telepathic means, because that's really, I guess, the way that most of these shadow people communicate.
Okay.
So the next type of shadow person is the angry, hooded shadow person. Dark hooded figures have been a source of fear in humans all over the globe for centuries.
Again, these figures seem to feed off of our fear, and in fact, psychic Don Newland of the Ozark Paranormal Society has seen entities like this and knows how frightening they can be. It's an evil entity, Newland said. The fear it sends through your body is something hard to describe, but you know with every inch of your existence that what you are in the presence of is not good and you should not be there.
Ugh.
Reports of cloaked shadow people are worldwide. Why would people from the United States, Sweden, South Africa, and Australia see the same entity? Parapsychologist Lloyd Arbach said it's probably societal. Besides the shadow people, there are reported sightings of the Grim Reaper, which Ashley just said. He said, it is likely that there's a psychological component in many of these sightings. The next entities are shadows that attack.
Which they can leave that shit at home.
Don't bring it here.
I don't need the violence. I don't need your shadow violence. Like, are you kidding me right now?
Most people who encounter shadow people are convinced these beings are demons who, again, feed off of fear and, in fact, are the most difficult entities to get rid of because they tend to be very tenacious once they decide to visit someone on a regular basis.
They're thirsty.
One night, when Terry was in junior high school, she was awakened by an electric charge that left a tingling cold throughout her body. It was like a low-level vibration, Terry said. She scanned the room, but her glasses were sitting on her nightstand, and she couldn't make out more than shadowy blobs in the room. I couldn't clearly see anything, but did feel like I was being watched, she said. I'm certain there was a shadow person in the room with me that night. I've had falling dreams that were more than dreams. I would wake up after feeling myself being dropped from ceiling height.
What? What? Okay, sorry.
This is a shadow that attacks.
And that reminds me of other things, too, also. And I am telling you right now, you better not pick me up. You best not.
You're too thick with muscle to pick up. So
oh my God, what are you trying to say right now?
You're a muscly little bean.
I'm too heavy.
No. No.
It doesn't
That's not
matter
what
anyway.
I'm
I'm open. I'm loud and proud about my weight.
You are a strong little bean.
Okay.
I would slam hard into the bed and get the wind knocked out of me often. I think I was being lifted by something, and then when I started to wake up, it dropped me and hid.
Tell me no. I don't want to hear it. I can't. Ugh.
Terry said the couple that sold her parents the house was paranoid about something there. For years, we didn't experience anything until the events I mentioned, she said. I haven't had anything physical happen for a while, but I do once in a while get the shivers or feel cold for no reason. I think whatever is here is now satisfied just to watch me rather than mess with me.
Dude, I'm going to tell you something. What about all the masturbating? Are you watching that too?
Girl.
What?
Because you know.
I am against this idea that somebody is just sitting around watching. I'd rather you pick me up in bed and drop me.
Listen, please don't watch me. Please just
keep it to yourself.
Absolutely. No, you know what though? I'm in agreement with you. Terry said she believes shadow people are attracted to homes with conflict, domestic violence, alcohol or drug abuse, or just a lot of arguing all the time. They get stronger when there are a lot of negative emotions present. They are psychic vampires. When you have one of these things attached to you, you frequently feel tired and depressed from them leeching your energy and emotions. These things are definitely not harmless. I wish I knew some way to get rid of them.
Yeesh.
Which, look, hold on.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. Domestic violence, okay.
I did kind of think that was
violence.
I thought that was a slightly weird thing to say.
I don't like it.
No.
Because I don't like that in particular, or alcohol, or arguing all the time. That just is silly to me because, listen. Listen up. I've been in a violent domestic home before, like just me personally, not like my parents. My parents are amazing people, but and in an alcoholic kind of environment, and in a lot of arguing all the time kind of an environment. And I honestly have never experienced a shadow entity, so that I don't like it.
Well, plus I feel like it's a little bit of like the victim gets what they get. I don't like. What are you trying to say?
Well, and then the other thing is, when one of these things feels attached to you, you frequently feel tired and depressed from them leeching your energy and emotions. That's just feeling the way you feel. Like you can feel like depressed and tired.
Oh, I know.
Being depressed and tired. You know what I mean?
Oh, do I know?
Same. But I just don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't like that there's a paranormal entity attached to you, and,
right?
You know, because of domestic violence or whatever. Because A, never saw a shadow person, never saw a black-eyed kid when I was in that situation, and B, it's just weird. We're continuing to perpetuate the demonization of
no
depression.
Pun intended. Yeah.
Exactly. No.
I mean, that's an actual pun. That's like the best pun you've ever inadvertently made.
It really is, and I didn't mean it, but seriously, like it's
right.
That is what it is, and I don't like it. Let's just call a spade a spade.
Yeah. Get your story straight, bitch. Sorry, lady, if you ever hear this, whatever your name is, don't care. Okay, so the next type are shadow cats, and like I had a little explosion about earlier. There's a whole book written about this, which I was like, what? I mean, there's stuff I've never even known, like how many things are there out there that we just don't even have any idea are some sort of thing. I'm curious. So cats and the paranormal have been intertwined for centuries, and during the Middle Ages, cats were thought to be spirit familiars that served and guarded witches. Cats were often burned alive with their masters, who were judged to be practicing witchcraft. What the fuck? Are you telling me right now? It was also believed that witches could assume the shape of cats and would sneak into sleeping babies' rooms to rob them of their lives. Although they didn't confess without torture during the witch trials, many witches did confess to doing these things as well. What are you trying to say here?
What are you trying to say here?
Okay. Additionally, Satan is also thought to take the form of a black cat in his earthly form, which I was like, really though? Meow. I'm the king of hell. A pastor of St. Christopher Old Catholic Church in Louisville, Kentucky, Bishop James Long, said that there are all sorts of shadow animals, but the cat often means something specific and ominous. The cat tends to be the result of dark witchcraft, which, okay, churchy. All right.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
It's just perpetuating that type of, not stereotype, but what's the word that I'm looking for?
I don't even know. All I know is I'm just like, listen up. I'm sorry that I say it so much, but witches, everybody's fine. Let's all just do our own things. Guess what? Satan's there. He's great. You know, there's witches out there. They're great. There are witches that are pieces of shit. And guess what? There are great Christians out there too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? And
there's ones that are pieces of shit.
Right? And
For sure.
Let's just, whatever, we'll let you be. But your church background, I think, has a bit to do with your opinions about these things.
100%, always. And I have always said it, and I pretty much always will say it, that what we've been brought up to believe as kids and into our adolescent and adult years is something that we always want to correlate, or the things that we know or we've been taught, to the things that we don't know or haven't been taught or haven't researched yet.
Yeah.
Anyhow, the final type of shadow entity that we read within our book is the Hat Man.
The Hat Man!
Reported as being very dapper and fastidious, they wear everything from a top hat to a derby, and most commonly a fedora.
So they're actually shadow douchebags.
Yeah, no, they're douchebags. They've got the beers on their necks. It's fine. They milady you all the time on Reddit. It's cool. No, it's good. It's good.
That was good.
The Hat Man is thought to relate to businessmen, and as we do live in a world that is ruled by corporations, that comes to no surprise. Dr. Carla Edwards, who's a psychology professor at Northwest Missouri State University, agrees that this creeping black hat-wearing figure we see in our periphery, accompanied by feelings of impending doom, probably reflects upon society's fears. Sometimes people invite evil into their lives, whether it be willingly or unwillingly. Don Newland, a medium with the Ozark Paranormal Society, calls shadow people lower level energies and calls them deceitful. Active invitations, such as Ouija boards, and passive invitations like alcoholism, drug abuse, emotional abuse, gambling problems, etc., can all open you on up to these shadow persons. Don's experimentation with a Ouija board was during an emotionally stressful time as a teen, and unfortunately for her, something answered her invitation.
Well, duh.
I actually had something evil in my house. This was a very large, dark presence, Don said. From 18 to 21, I tried hard to ignore it, and the more I tried to ignore it, the more things moved in my house. People who haven't experienced that think it's make-believe. You have to deal with it to know otherwise.
I don't want to, so...
I'm good, so that's fine.
Yeah.
However, other people are of the belief that the Ouija board works, not through spirits, but through the subconscious mind of the user.
Possible.
Yeah. So essentially, please don't invite shadow people into your life if you don't want them around, and they won't come on in.
And I wonder, well, I think I don't think everybody has invited them. I think that's, again, if there are real shadow people plaguing people, I bet some of those are poor old innocent folks that didn't invite this on themselves.
Right. Absolutely.
We do live in such a victim-blamey society.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, yeah. So now I wanted to just go over first-hand accounts of these various types of shadow people that we haven't already discussed, because hearing people's stories is going to help us have a better idea about what these experiences are like. So one of the first accounts that I read about was Hermann Hesse, the author of Siddhartha and Steppenwolf, wrote about his lifelong experience with a shadow being in his autobiography. He said, "I do not know when I saw him for the first time. I think that he was always there, that he came into the world with me. The man was a tiny, gray, shadowy being, a spirit or goblin, angel or demon, who at times walked in front of me during my dreams and also my waking hours, and whom I had to obey more than my father, more than my mother, more than reason. Yes, more often than fear."
That at all.
I was like, what, dude? He was like haunted by this little thing like his whole life? Ugh, that sounds terrible. Another lady named Margot Davies is from Seattle, and she said a week after moving into a house just outside of Seattle in 2002, a relative who had stayed the night had told her she felt something in the house the night prior. That was the last she thought about anything weird going on until 5 years later, as she sat in the hot tub in the backyard and saw a large shadowy figure standing just behind a lamp in the window of the living room. Initially, she thought someone was in the house, but then she realized it would be impossible for a person to stay that dark standing just in front of a lamp. The minute the shadow figure realized she'd seen it, it quickly moved from the window through the wall in the living room and emerged in the kitchen and disappeared. She ran into the house and searched everywhere, but found no one. She never told a soul. Months later, she had a cousin stay the night who looked horrible the next morning and proceeded to tell her about a shadow figure he witnessed watching him from the doorway while he was sleeping. It then disappeared through a wall. Keep to your damn selves, first of all. I don't
watch me
want
sleeping.
anything to do with
like
you.
it.
Looking at me in the hot tub.
It's creepy. It's pervy. Please stop.
Right. Come on. I thought that was kind of creepy, the description that she gave, that it was standing with a lamp in front of it and it didn't illuminate it at all. I just have to say that's got to be the most huge mind fuck. You know? How do you even process it? I don't know.
Carl Beckham is another man who spoke with Offutt and had a terrifying story of his father's. Just before his death in 1992, Carl was taking his father home after a doctor's appointment, and his father asked him to position his car so that his headlights could shine into the backyard so he could, quote, see what was back there. He must have had that experience. He must have had an experience enough times that he asked his son. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Carl thought it was an odd request, but obliged, considering his father slept in a room at the back of the house that overlooked the yard. Once inside his father's room, he saw that the man had nailed a number of pieces of wood into the door as a way to lock it to prevent it from being opened from the outside. That's not locking. That's
barricading.
That's
in a
barricading 100%. I've never locked a door and said, you know what? Can you nail some boards?
I hate to say it, but on Skinwalker Ranch, when they bought that house, the doors were like barricaded from the inside, remember? It was weird as hell. So it's like, what is it that they feel? What is... I mean, I guess it could also just be like a mental instability, but what is it that they feel they need to take that much, like, it's like a lock isn't going to do. You need all
You need to be nailed. Nails, boards need to be nailed into the wall.
Ugh, okay.
While Carl and no one else could see anything in the yard, his father saw blacker-than-night figures that roamed the yard at night while he tried to sleep. He was obviously terrified by these beings and believed them to be spirits that fed off of the dying.
And his dad did die very shortly after that, so who knows, but yikes a doodle. As a young girl, Maggie Antone had experiences with a few different shadow people in her home. One was a tall man with an upturned collar who stood in her doorway, and another who she perceived as a messy-haired shadow figure. One night, as she lay in the top bunk of the bunk bed in her room, she decided to turn and look over the edge of her bed. She says someone was standing right there. She says, I came face to face with the messy-haired shadow man. It seemed like he was coming up to look over the top of my bed at me, and we sort of collided. Oh! I can't.
What does that even feel like? You collided?
I can't. I truly have heebie-jeebies. I have goosebumps about it. It's grossing me out. She says she jumped back really quickly in surprise and it was gone. I don't know what it must feel like, but according to some of these people, electric is what it felt like. She says that these shadows have appeared to her all her life and are easy to distinguish even in the darkness due to the intensity of theirs.
A woman named Lisa Fallor had experiences as a child in her home in Ohio. She says the home was impossible to keep warm, even with a full chimney in the living room, and all the heat would escape right up the flue. She would do her schoolwork at the kitchen table, as the kitchen was the warmest spot in the house and where everyone usually congregated. While she would be sitting at the table, she would see shadow people wandering through the adjacent dining room. She says they wouldn't simply be a trick of the eye because you could look directly at them and they would just quietly move on. While she never felt threatened by the shadows she saw, she did feel uneasy and frightened of them.
So that, sometimes I'll hear, like I talk about it all the time, but I have seen people say, well, it's just a trick of the eye because you're seeing them out of the corner of your eye, blah, 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 blah. But, this lady and there are various others have supposedly seen them head on looking straight at them, so it's not like you can say it was just a trick of the eye in this case. There's a man named Cliff that has been tormented by shadow people since he was a child. He says he sees them hovering above him, over him, around him at all times of day and night. At first, he chalked them up to night terrors, but when he began to experience them when he knew he was awake, he knew that things had changed. One night, Cliff's girlfriend switched sides of the bed with him. A little while later, she woke up screaming. She said that she had seen someone crouched beside her on his side of the bed. No.
I don't like that.
I don't know why, but the crouching thing, take it
just
and leave
like the
it.
jerking thing. I don't need it. Thank you.
Cliff had never once told her about the shadows that he saw until that moment. He says that now she won't sleep on his side of the bed anymore, but he's too afraid to tell her that they are on her side, too. And I said, hell nah.
That sounds like a fucking creepypasta.
Hell nah. Okay, so there's a South African man named Rian.
Rian?
He told Offutt of an experience he had lying in bed one night getting ready to go to sleep. He saw what he described as an exceptionally dark patch in the corner of the wall where his bed was placed. He extended his arm and moved his hand around, attempting to touch the wall behind it that was difficult to make out through the darkness of the shadow. When he moved his hand around, he felt a shock similar to static electricity. He quickly snapped his arm back out of the shadow and began to feel pins and needles immediately. He said it felt like his skin was contracting and getting very tight, and he began to lose mobility of his arm. Dave Richardson of NWMSU says that it is possible to feel touched if you aren't actually physically touched, and in this example, it is possible that you could have the hairs on your arm stand on end due to some kind of electrical interaction that causes this reaction, and thus feeling like you've been touched.
Ashley, you and I read the same book.
I know.
So, every fiber in my being leads me to believe you read this already.
Okay.
But
you're probably right.
Another common explanation is that these beings are actually from different dimensions and they somehow bleed into ours.
You don't say.
There are 3 concepts that Marie Jones, the author of Science, How New Discoveries in Quantum Physics and New Science May Explain the Existence of Paranormal Phenomena, theorizes could be the case. The first concept is that of parallel universes. Theoretically, if these infinite other universes exist, we really should not be able to access them based upon our current known laws of physics. However, even theoretical physicists entertain the notion that perhaps the laws of physics on the other side allow for some sort of crossover.
Plus, what about all the stuff we don't know yet?
Mm-hmm. And exactly, that's based upon our current known laws of physics. That's constantly evolving.
Yes, for sure. And we are just little pea brains. The second is spatial and temporal alternate dimensions. It is said that alternate dimensions could be infinite in size and exist all around us. And although our current laws of physics do not allow us to access the other dimensions, according to Marie Jones, author of that same author we just talked about, it is possible that a sinking of energy or something along those lines would open up a portal of some sort to let beings in from other dimensions to come into ours. And it's Skinwalker Ranch. Okay.
Finally, the third concept that she talks about is the 0 point field. This is an electromagnetic energy field that fills a vacuum. Within this field lies the landscape of the time of the past, present, and future. She also goes on to say that linear time is only a human construct, but in the quantum world, there is no linear nature. It all happens at once.
Talk about...
Yeah, talk about being super theoretical. Mm-hmm. Therefore, everyone who has died is living now and will live. And that opens up the door to the possibility that certain people are able to tap into this field for information such as remote viewing, psychic ability, and even healing others. It also presents the possibility that entities may be coming back from the field, manifesting in our level of reality, which is just one among many levels, and then vanishing back into the field.
Where are they going,
mm-hmm.
you know? Dave Richardson of the physics department at NWMSU says that while the possibility of other dimensions is something that we're now just beginning to explore, if there are other dimensions, and considering there are people who claim to have touched a shadow person, these could actually be real people simply in this alternate dimension. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a dead person or some sort of demon or a spirit. It could just be Carol Jo over in the alternate dimension wandering through your living room because she is overlapping with
your reality.
Yeah. Oh. His partner, Rick Toomey, is fairly dismissive of this hypothesis, though, being that there is not a way to test it at this point. And the same goes with string theory, which is my little baby I have books on that I'm reading right now. So take it easy, Toomey. He says being unable to test the hypothesis makes it, at this point, on the same level as the supernatural. And he says, interdimensional is as science fiction as it gets. So, you know, bringing me down a couple notches, but I'm okay with it. Still fascinates the shit out of me.
Just because there's no way to test it and there's no way to scientifically prove or disprove it doesn't mean that it can't fascinate the fuck out of you, dude.
Yeah, and also it can't be a possibility still.
Exactly.
We just don't know. Right. We don't know. So according to Wikipedia, metaphysics is the branch of philosophy that examines the fundamental nature of reality, including the relationship between mind and matter, between substance and attribute, and between potentiality and actuality. It is abstract and it goes beyond our physical world.
In the Greek philosopher Aristotle's work, Metaphysics, he explored the nature of existence and what sort of things exist, how things can exist when the natural world is constantly changing, and the possibility or the impossibility of humans understanding science.
In his book, The Active Side of Infinity, anthropologist and author Carlos Castaneda wrote about shadow people, calling them mud shadows. He said he often found these shadows gathering and dancing at the edge of his vision. He and others believe the fear felt when encountering these shadow beings is real, as they feed off the fear in human energy. He says that in his experience, there were organic and inorganic entities. The inorganic, who would either barter for your energy or just outright steal it, and the organic, who would not attempt to gain from your energy but would not stop others from doing so. Now, most of Castaneda's experience with these mud shadows came from lucid dreaming, where a person is dreaming but is awake or aware enough to be able to somewhat control the dream and their actions in it. To some, in certain metaphysical circles, they equate this lucid dreaming to astral travel. Basically, you're out interdimensionally traveling and in this state are made vulnerable to other entities in these dimensions, many who want to feed off your energy. So it kind of sounds like the whole Insidious franchise,
Absolutely.
basically. For sure. A psychologist and author, Stan Gooch, which...
I don't like it. Oh, girl. Oh, boy.
He believes that all forms of various paranormal entities are creations and projections of our other mind and brain, but also contends that they do produce real, independent events in our physical world.
As far as other beliefs are concerned, there are plenty of additional cultural, mythological explanations for shadow people. Mm-hmm. The first of which is the spiritual shadow. This definition is most related with other paranormal beings such as incubi, succubi, poltergeists, ghosts, etc. And although typically believed to be evil, not so far described to be demons. Jack Alice, who's a proponent and a believer of shadow people, stated, quote, "I definitely believe in a spirit world. What a spirit world is just other dimensions. The reason that benevolent spirits aren't more active is it's an unwritten law of the universe not to interfere in the affairs of the indigenous people on the planet. The benevolent follow this and the malevolent don't care. They're malevolent. Although Alice is convinced some of these spirit visitors are evil, he won't go so far as to call them demons. I don't put a whole lot of credence in the traditional Christians," he says. "There's a right way to practice Christianity and a wrong way to practice Christianity. The wrong way, those people tend to see demons anywhere," which we've talked about before. They tend to see the Judeo-Christian definition of demons at every turn. So,
right.
Okay.
Yeah. He was very opinionated, though. He does not care.
Absolutely.
He does not care to hold it back.
Good.
Spilling it
Good
all
for
over.
him.
Right. Right? Indigenous peoples worldwide practiced metaphysics before the expansion of Western culture long ago. I've spoken about this before, about how the indigenous people's connection to the earth, each other, their spirituality, it seemed to resonate on a higher plane of awareness of those things than our current muddled one does. Many different indigenous tribes have tales of shadow people, from the Cherokee people whose legend of the shadow beings has a long and terrible history. The beings are said to be larger than an average person, humanoid in shape, but not proportionate to a normal person. Their appearance is more monstrous in nature. According to Cherokee tradition, the shadow beings are the product of medicine people gone wrong and can be manipulated by bad medicine or magic. Damn, again, that was what a skinwalker was. So I'm like, what? Okay. So these medicine people once used their power over spirits or to take other forms, such as foxes, wolves, owls, and shadow people during warfare or to hunt. Over time, they became greedy and perverted the intended uses of their powers for corrupt means. Now they use their medicine to hurt people for vengeance or control. At some point, they lose their power and have to become parasitic and feed off of others, which in turn transforms them from human to something else entirely. The Cherokee refer to these dark medicine people as Tijali, who you would not be able to identify in passing. They are still alive to some degree, but not necessarily human. The attacks these shadow people can inflict range from spiritual to physical. Alternatively, there are some Cherokee people who believe that the shadow beings are more benevolent. There's a man named Philip Hensley, a Cherokee man from Mexico, Missouri, which I didn't even know exists. Oh. And he firmly believes that they are simply deceased people. And he remembers an elder telling him about the shadow people and how they would make an appearance to you when you least expect it. And when you have the feeling like you are not alone in a room, that's a shadow person. I don't like that. I don't like it.
I don't ever feel that way, so
I don't either.
I'm actually okay with it because luckily I've never felt not alone in a room unless there was an animal in the room, like a cat.
Yeah. Hopefully that just means my rooms be empty. But yeah, that's what we're going to go with. Philip says that shadow beings are part of the cultures of many tribes, including the Anasazi, who we briefly spoke about in Skinwalker Ranch and the Doppelganger episodes, the Hopi, the Navajo, Apache, and countless other indigenous tribes. He says that he had his own encounter with a shadow person at the Natural History Museum in New York City at an exhibit featuring artifacts from ancient Mesoamerican cultures. He said he heard a voice come from inside of him, telling him he was on sacred ground and not to take pictures. It was then that he noticed a shadow person there with him in the room, in the shape of what he knew was an elderly Native American woman. He walked to her and greeted her in Cherokee, and he said she would speak to him not aloud, but only in his head. This was fitting with the Apache tradition of how the shadow people communicate. He took the experience as a sign that he was on the correct path in life, and he has held it close as a special experience he had ever since.
Well, good, dude. I mean,
I know, man.
That's like the first good experience with shadow people. I'm okay with it.
It kind of slightly reminded me of the guy from whatever town it was in Texas with the black-eyed kids that was like, it was terrible at the time, but then it like turned his whole life around. So, who knows?
Exactly.
1 in every 50.
Yeah, I guess that's the ratio.
Yeah. So, like Bianca kind of mentioned earlier, ghosts are another possibility of what this could be. Though, I mean, saying that, what does that really tell us? It's a ghost. Well, what's a ghost?
Yeah, we have no idea what those are either.
To some researchers, it is believed that shadow people are ghosts, but are the type to have darker intentions than a regular old benign deceased person or restless soul trapped on the earth. So, who knows about that one?
Another explanation is the demon that is so prevalent in Christianity, and we just mentioned maybe 5 minutes ago. As mentioned, some people are more apt to believe that these beings are demons. Again, those of the Christian faith are more likely to believe and advocate that because of things like binge drinking, drug abuse, and sexual perversion are getting worse and worse.
Or better and better.
And these things take your mind to a different level of consciousness, and therefore you cannot control the state you're in. So because of these things, shadow people are invited right on into your life. No binge drinking.
Right.
No sex before marriage. Don't do it.
You have to be dreading life in order for these demons to not grab you.
I gotta tell you, man. I gotta tell you.
But anyway, so it's it's one theory. Yeah. We may not ascribe to it, but
some people do, and just because we don't doesn't mean okay.
Right.
Moving forward.
And we respect that theory with as much respect as we can.
True. Moving forward. We talked about the demons of Christianity. Now we're going to talk about the jinn of Islam again, which we've mentioned before in the incubus and succubus episode. It is a paranormal entity in which we in the Western world have turned into the genie. It is at best indistinguishable from man and at worst our predator. Jinn is taken from the Arabic root of Jannah, which means to hide, and they can become invisible or change its form to appear as anything. Allah, the Arabic word for God, created the jinn from smokeless flame of fire before man and bestowed powers to them to test their loyalty to him. Flying, teleportation, shape-shifting, invisibility, and the ability to possess humans are some of those powers. Jinn, who are Muslim, rarely use their abilities for harm and can even marry and have children with human women.
Wow.
They can be banished by prayer, but a jinn is attracted to every non-Muslim. So, yeah.
Oh. Mr. Aladdin, sir.
Yeah, exactly.
What will your pleasure be?
Exactly.
You ain't never had a friend like me.
I don't know that it's the Robin Williams / Will Smith version. Close.
Okay.
Finally are the wandering souls of Hinduism. The concept of the Antarloka, which is the dimension between worlds where souls wander from incarnation to incarnation, is believed to be the birthplace of a paranormal entity that corresponds to the description of shadow people. These souls could simply be lost, either wandering around in a daze or agitated. They are experienced by people who are most sensitive to their presence.
Some researchers suggest that sightings of shadow people could actually be electrical stimulation affecting the brain. According to a September 21st, 2006 issue of Nature, low-level electrical currents aimed at specific locations in the brain caused a 22-year-old student to sense a shadow figure in the room with her. She kept turning her head from side to side as if to catch something in the corner of her eye, and when asked what she was doing, she said that there was a shadow person in the room with her intending to do her harm. When the current was killed, the shadow was gone. Eventually, the woman said the shadow person was now sitting behind her, attempting to move things out of her hand. The actions that the supposed shadow person was making, in actuality, mimicked the woman's own actions, which led researchers to believe that the electrical current was making this woman misinterpret her own movements and assigning them to a malevolent figure in the room, which is very fascinating. Obviously, that could totally be possible for all we know, but also that would have to be some pretty targeted electrical current, though, is all I'm thinking. It's just some way to logically explain it. It doesn't mean that it necessarily explains 99% of the actual accounts of people's experiences, you know. Chemist Rick Toomey says that obviously anything that throws off the chemical balance of the brain can cause problems, and if there are issues with neurotransmitters and your brain chemistry is imbalanced, it's very possible that you can see, feel, and think things are happening that aren't. So, again, but also, if your brain is manifesting things, how, it's like the same, it's the same, you could say
Listen
the same
to
thing.
me. The brain.
Listen to you.
That's my listen up. Listen to me. The brain is a very powerful thing. It's...
Yeah.
Have you ever had a fever dream?
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah, I have.
Let me tell you, waking up from a fever dream is the most disorienting thing. And your brain is fucking cooking in that little feverish body of yours. So, okay, maybe it's an electrical current, maybe it's a fucking fever dream, maybe it's something like that.
Yeah.
But your brain really is so much more powerful than we typically give it credit for. So, I'm such a skeptic that I'm like, I don't know if it's a real fucking being. But I don't know if it's a fucking real being. A. B. It could be electrical currents. It could be a fucking fever dream. It could be so many things that we don't fucking know.
Yeah,
it could be
understand.
Exactly.
Right. Well, as I was about to say, no, you're fine. Keep on ranting. I'm just saying, similarly, this could also be these situations could be putting your brain at a certain place to be able to see and feel things that you usually wouldn't. Who's to say that these things that are seen with the chemical imbalance aren't just as real as the things that you would see without it? So I guess that's what I was trying to say, and I'd already, said it, and I didn't even realize that I was going to say it. But, who's to say? We can't explain it. So what are you going to do?
There's some shit we just don't know, especially dream shit, especially things about the brain. It's such a delicate organ that we have that we don't even realize is that fucking delicate. That we haven't done
delicate or powerful.
Both.
Okay.
I mean, when you think of a brain surgeon,
or sensitive.
When you think of a brain surgeon, do you think of that as pretty rough surgery? You think of that as essentially delicate surgery where you have to be very, very, very careful.
But I also don't know that I don't think I know of very many rough surgeries.
I mean, a nose job, let me tell you real quick. That's a fucking rough ass surgery.
Because of the chiseling up your nose.
Break
and stuff.
that shit off your. They're like, they punch you.
They just punch you. Yeah, just punch you. So another possibility, sort of, to explain this, is sleep paralysis. So we have discussed sleep paralysis a bit in a few of our past episodes. Most recently, the incubus and succubus demons, episode 40, which we already mentioned. But for a quick recap of the actual physiological phenomenon, when we sleep, our brains shut down the connection to our body so that we don't act out our dreams. When this connection shutoff fails, we get sleepwalking. When you wake up before it can reconnect, your body is paralyzed momentarily, and in addition to that, you could also still be in somewhat of a dream state, seeing or feeling things that may not actually be tangible in the room with you. For skeptics of the horror stories people have of sleep paralysis, this is the cut and dry explanation with nothing more to see here. That said, there are an incredible amount of people who have had experiences with sleep paralysis that seem to convey a deeper story than that. While this is not the episode where we're doing a deep dive on sleep paralysis, we do want to discuss a few accounts that relate to our current topic at hand. Sleep paralysis is most commonly experienced by an individual who, quote-unquote, wakes up. What this state actually is up for debate and varies case by case. It feels like a weight is on their chest and or they cannot move. And in many cases, a shadow is present, typically towering over them while they lay in bed. According to April Habarian, a psych professor at Northwest Missouri State University, when people sleep and enter the REM phase, it is very common for them to see things, and this could very well explain the shadow people experiences that coincide with sleep paralysis. A woman named Carrie Mahler recounted a story to author Jason Offutt, who told him of a night when she was half asleep in bed, laying on her stomach and the right side of her face. She says she was dreaming, but because in her dream she was in the same position as she actually was, she feels like she was only partially dreaming. She says in her dream she felt a presence in the room with her and turned her head to the foot of her bed, where she saw 4 shadow beings standing there. She felt like the shadow beings had waited for her to fall asleep, and suddenly her body began to rise out of the bed and move towards these shadow people, whose arms were now outstretched towards her, and she had no control of it whatsoever. Suddenly, she was pushed back into her bed, where she woke up and could remember everything vividly. Don't touch me.
There was another encounter from an online user in which he stated he saw the shadow man as a 6-year-old child. Again, he's a child experiencing this. As a man, he's recounting the story. Vividly, exactly. He was at his dad's new house, and the shadow man was towering over him. He couldn't move and tried to scream, but there was a horrible weight on his chest. Obviously, this is another account that sounds like sleep paralysis. So this explanation is to say that shadow people encounters aren't anything other than science and probably the product of dreams, according to these particular accounts and stories.
Yeah. I mean, it's obvious that it's a high possibility that when you're in a extremely sleep deprived or you're already sleeping or half awake state, that you're going to be able to see things, feel things that aren't maybe aren't there. Mm-hmm. But like I said, I don't know that it necessarily could explain. It can't explain everybody's experience with a shadow person. Some people believe that shadow people that they encounter are simply spirits protecting them, appearing in times of trouble and bringing a calming sense to them. These are few and far between, but they're out there.
Okay.
Like I said, you got to be a little bit crazy if you're
all right.
If you're like, they really make me feel at home. It's like the tall man, the 7'6" man with no eyes hovering above me in bed. Yeah, I love it. And then there are astral travelers, people astral traveling and manifesting a shadow being. That's another theory, that people are actually just projecting their bodies somewhere and it's appearing to other people as a shadow. They could also be manifestations of our already held beliefs that they exist simply because we think that they're there and our mind is making it happen for us. Last but not least are the aliens, which there are various accounts of people who are adamant they're aliens and they've been abducted by these shadow people aliens, and who knows, maybe that's true. But I didn't look into it too much because
definitely another subject for another episode that we can definitely delve into further.
Yes.
So whatever the explanation, most people who encounter these shadow beings report feeling afraid, violated, and helpless. Exorcist James Bucknam said, "To a shadow person, you are nothing, and sometimes they'll ignore someone. However, if you strike their curiosity, look out, because their presence means bad things are on the way. Shadow people never operate alone and are very curious. They investigate everything and are constantly checking people out. They attract other negative entities as well that are floating around looking for something to attach to. He's convinced that shadow people have never been human and exist in negative realms, part of the spirit realm, and bad news." As far as the science of shadow people is concerned, Northwest Missouri State University chemistry and physics professor Rick Toomey stated that in order for shadow people to exist, they'd have to be quite dense. It would have to be a solid physical entity, not liquid and not gas.
But somehow disappears into a wall. So could these shadow beings be a physical manifestation of our collective conscious or fears As we talked about in the Black Eyed Kids episodes, that's a definite possibility. For example, UFO sightings progressed from more basic craft, like aircraft, to more and more advanced as time passed and our technology advanced. And, for example, it always stays one step ahead of what our perceived technology is for aircraft. Is that because we project this, or what exactly is going on? I don't think that aliens technology was like, let's move along at the same rate as human beings.
Yeah.
That has to be something to do with the collective conscious of people who experienced UFO sightings. According to Rhine Research Center's Sally Rhine, the large number of first-hand accounts of these shadow people, sometimes by more than one witness at a time, lends itself to the notion that these are simply some type of consciousness that exists after a person has passed. In addition to multiple witnesses and singular encounters, are the animals that seem to react to these beings, which is something we've seen in countless stories, from Skinwalker to Black Eyed Kids to traditional ghost encounters. There are studies that show that some mediums are able to pinpoint areas of paranormal activity independent of field researchers' information or their knowing anything about the location. And this does all suggest that there really is something there, you would think. I would think. Sally wonders, are these spirits a certain type of energy or a persistence of effect over time? Right now, your face looks very displeased.
I'm not displeased. I'm just
okay.
very intent in my...
Okay. I mean, I'm like, do we need to start a philosophical discussion group?
I mean,
about
there
this
should
stuff?
be.
Like,
really, that's the reason
For
I'm
real.
like, oh, okay.
Right. So as with everything in the paranormal realm, we can only hypothesize all day, really, about what these things could be, but in the end, we're never going to really be able to determine it absolutely. One of the craziest things that I read in my research was in the book Shadow World by Brad Steiger, where he echoed the exact sentiments that I had during Black Eyed Kids. He says, we have to at least consider that all these various phenomena share similar characteristics being experienced by a slew of different people from all walks of life all over the world are originating in the same place. They're all the same phenomena, either choosing to present itself as something most significant to the person experiencing it, or in the way that their brain is able to interpret it best. And I was like, damn, how did I have the exact same idea as this?
You should have been a paranormal researcher. You fucking missed your calling, bro.
I just was very excited that someone else
Hell yeah.
also had that same idea that I didn't even rip off somehow.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, if you want to get rid of shadow people, or if you'd like to prevent their presence in your life, there are a few different solutions to these paranormal parasites. Prayer, comedy, positive energy, etc. are the most common ways of expelling or preventing them from existing in your life.
I bet also if you creeped on them real hard, they might get turned
They
off.
might get the heebie-jeebies from you.
Just masturbate excessively, and that shadow person will flee like no other.
They're like, God damn, this is excessive.
That's why I've never had a shadow person encounter.
Ashley. So could we be catching a glimpse of our multidimensional neighbors as the fabric of our realities meld? Who knows? Maybe.
I think so.
Maybe they're seeing us as indescribable shadow beings too.
Oh, maybe. Furiously masturbating over there as a shadow. They're like... Instead of the tall hat man in that dimension, they're over there listing out the various types of shadow beings. They're like the aggressive masturbator.
The candle lighting masturbator. Ashley.
Okay.
So we gathered a lot of our information from various sources. We did both purchase a couple of books to read. The first being Darkness Walks, The Shadow People Among Us by Jason Offutt, and Shadow World, True Encounters with Beings from the Dark Side by Brad Steiger.
I can't wait to get more books from that.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. He's got some books.
Yeah, he does.
As far as internet research is concerned, the first website is tokenrock.com, and obviously Wikipedia for definitions and so forth.
Right. Well, that's it for us on Shadow Peeps. It's been real.
It's been real something. Thank you guys again for all of your support. And thank you guys for sharing us with your friends. We've gotten a few follows on Instagram where they're like, oh my gosh, at whomever sent me, and I love your show. And
continue. I just remembered something, but continue your thought, please.
And just wanted to thank you guys for any of the 5-star written reviews that y'all have sent.
Also, when this comes out, you're still going to have a few days left to send us your story of your paranormal experience. We need it by October 5th, and I think that's Sunday. And you best be getting your goddamn stories to us, because why would you not want to share your stories with us so that we can share them with the world on the podcast for our listeners' episode. So
that's actually this next Saturday. But we've actually gotten a few listener stories already at the Creep It Real Gmail. So
yeah, we've gotten a handful, but I want more.
No, of course. More is always better. So send it to creepitrealpod@gmail.com. And then also your 5-star written reviews. Make bank accounts.
Bianca's just going to do a song and dance every episode about that.
Please. It helps us so much grow and get us in front of people. Also, all of the shares, seriously, like really all of the shares that you guys, when you guys like send us to your cousins or like at your friends, it really does help. I'm definitely cutting that.
When you send us your cousins, send us all your family members.
Anyways.
Okay. All right. Love you guys.
Love you.